Welcome back to the Unbuttoned podcast. I'm your host, Yuva, and today we're talking to my friend Claire. Hey, Claire. Thanks for joining us today. So, how does it feel to be on the Unbuttoned podcast? Would you say this is the most excited you've ever been?
Uh, yeah, I will say that it's definitely a very exciting opportunity. Yeah,
What
feels
is
it
the
feels
most
great.
excited you've ever been?
I will say it's on the top five. On the
Top
top
five.
five. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, who really is Claire? Can you give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, of course. So, I am a senior at the University of Pennsylvania. I am studying digital media design. I'm also submatting in the computer graphics and game technology master's program. And in my free time, I like drawing, crocheting. I also used to like figure skate, and I'm in the West Philly Singers dance troupe right
Wow. That's a lot of really interesting things. I can't wait to
now.
hear more about it all.
Thank you.
But before we get into that, are you ready to do a segment that I like to call praising your awesome art and then collectively roasting my terrible art?
I am so ready.
You ready?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna start off by showing you guys some of Claire's awesome art. I've been a longtime fan of the stuff she's been creating. So let me start by showing you guys her website here. It's a bunch
Oh
of
wow.
really cool stuff. So before I get into each piece, how do you come up with the ideas for your work? So like this one, for example, like where did the idea come from?
To be honest, I don't really have that much of an idea or a plan before I start drawing. I most of my pieces are digital, and I sort of just start drawing from one specific area and then building around that because I like how it flows. I like it when like the different characters and elements in my piece flow together. So then I feel like if I start from a certain place and then sort of draw around that it creates that energy better.
So do you like start by just making one character and then building from there? Like in this one, if you remember, do you remember how you started and then what direction you went in from there?
Yeah, I actually started from like the three girls on the left side. So like I
Okay.
think it was that pair of girls who they're like holding she's holding her arm, and then from then I think I drew the girl to the left of her, and then I started drawing like the water. I don't really know if it's water, but the water that's like around her waist, and then the buildings that are underneath them. Um, yeah, and then I start adding like little characters, like the little I call them ghost guys. They're like the white
Like those
little
guys here.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that you see yourself in any of these characters? Are they supposed to represent you?
I think so. Yeah, I feel like I draw sort of as an outlet to express my emotions, and I feel like it's the most fulfilling way I found that I can do that. So I feel like it's like I express a certain emotion and I process that emotion by drawing a character um, that I resonate with. And a lot of people have also pointed out to me that I mostly draw women, so I guess that sort of aligns with that theory. But yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can see like all the intricate details that go into this. You mind if I show one of my art pieces real quick and
of
I can get your
course.
opinion on what you think? So start off with this. This just kind of came to me yesterday. I don't know, I was in a very like creative state and I just felt like I needed to express myself. So I don't know, what do you think about this and like what do you see with it and how do you interpret it? I just want to see if like what I was trying to get across in the artistry actually comes through to the viewer.
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting piece. Well, personally, I see. what appears to be like a human figure, but with potentially like a taco for a head. And I feel like the building, I'm compelled to say that that's like Chipotle.
See,
And yeah,
I wanted to like leave it up to the viewer's interpretation, but like I was kind of like trying to go for like Chipotle, but I figured instead of just spelling it out for someone, like why not have a little sense of mystery?
right. Because like at the end of the day, it's whatever resonates with the viewer.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I just feel like, is it Chipotle? Like, is it supposed to be Chipotle? Because like, why would a taco be skateboarding to Chipotle? Because presumably he would be eating there, right? So like, I don't know if he'd want to be going to Chipotle or maybe this is like some other store entirely, but like, I guess we'll never know. That's what kind of what I was trying to convey.
oh, wait, that's a good point. It's sort of like the taco's going there despite it knowing that it's bad for them. Like it's like an addiction almost, and they know that it's going to harm them. So that's interesting. That's an interesting viewpoint. Yeah.
Would you say like I'm getting there, like I somewhat maybe on par with some of the stuff that you've been showing and drawing on your website?
Well, I feel like everyone has their own like artistic style. I think it's more of a matter of like drawing and figuring out what it is that how you like to express yourself. And yeah, I think the work you've shown me looks really like you're starting to get there.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
I
awesome.
really was kind of inspired by this because like you see like kind of like I saw like a frog like human like figure in the background and like that inspired me to make like what's a human like figure of something that generally we wouldn't see like just roaming around with other humans. So it kind of brought a taco to mind. But how about we get more into this piece? So what's going on here? Is my interpretation of seeing a frog type figure in the back accurate or is this just supposed to be like part of the fog?
Yeah, for sure. That yes, that is a frog type figure in the background. Yeah, for this one, I think I um so this one just sort of came to me as I was falling asleep. And
Are
I was
you
just
falling
like
asleep?
yeah, it was like pandemic era, so I was really in my like art phase, and I was just experimenting with my like digital art a lot, and then I was like, oh, what would be really cool is if I drew like a rainy scene and there's a frog in the background. And then I like remember like waking up and writing it in my journal, and then like I tried to draw it the next day. Um, but I think I generally like the aesthetic of rainy days. So I think that drew me to drawing like a rainy scene. And then I also like sort of pushing this like sort of drawing things that are realistic, but not in a realistic way. Like in a lot of paintings, you'll see that the buildings I draw like curvy and distorted. So I think
Hmm?
this was the beginning of that and sort of putting things in an environment that they wouldn't usually be seen in.
So remind everyone again about what you're majoring in at Penn.
Oh yeah, so my major is called digital media design, and it's an interdisciplinary study between like, computer science and art.
So you said that here you were experimenting with different types of digital art. So is Clip Studio Paint something you learned about through your major, or is this just something you've experimented with? And what's different about Clip Studio Paint? Like, are you still sketching these elements, or is there some like more digital aspect to it where it helps you make an art piece like this?
Yeah, so Clip Studio Paint is something that my friend from like middle school introduced to me. And it's a drawing software like Procreate, except it's like it has more functionality than Procreate, although they're both like really good softwares to use. Um, and I would say it's similar to just drawing on a piece of paper, except you can undo and redo your um, choices, and then you get to like color pick. So I mean, the process of drawing is different, but you're still just like assembling things on a canvas.
Got
And
it. So do you use this on your iPad, or do you have like a separate stylus and pen that you connect to a computer?
yeah, so for Clip Studio Paint, I connect to a tablet, and I have a special pen and I draw it. But for Procreate, which I use for like my most recent piece, that's just on my iPad.
So before I say anything about this, I don't know, what kind of feeling and emotion does this elicit to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm reading this sign, or I'm thinking now that that's a computer screen. But that elicits sadness because if I were banned from ChatGPT, I would feel distraught, I'd say. And I'm guessing the person reading this feels distraught.
Yeah, yeah, definitely was trying to give a feeling of distraughtness, but it's also, I think, another thing I was trying to bring about in this artist. This is definitely a very questionable looking figure. He looks like he hasn't slept in days and doesn't really do proper oral care either. Based on like what you see about this figure, like it really brings some questions to mind. Like, what could he have asked ChatGPT where the entire system would ban him from using it ever again?
Oh, wow. That is a
To
good
kind of
question.
wonder that as well. Like, what could he have done to be banned from ChatGPT?
You know, when I first saw it, I didn't assume that he had done anything wrong. I just thought that someone banned him for no reason.
Talking about things like ChatGPT and generative AI, when we think about generative AI when it comes to art, like systems like DALL-E or Midjourney, what do you think about that as an artist? So it's like a lot of people nowadays who say like they're an artist, like almost like on par with my level and your level. And literally what they're doing is just typing into DALL-E some sort of prompt and then it generates it for them. And then they're like, this is my art, and they pass it off as their own. So what do you think about the role generative AI plays in artistry? And do you think people like that are just kind of an abomination to art itself? Or do you think that we should learn to recognize generative AI art as actually the prompt that someone put in to create that art? Should they get credit for that? Or would you just attribute all that to the system?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'm actually in like two classes right now that talk about sort of that question, like AI and who gets credit for the products of AI, and also in a design class that sort of investigates um, design and technology a bit more, and we use like AI products like that. Um, I I personally think that it's a different form of art. Like I think it takes skill to prompt engineer something that looks visually impressive and passes off as something that someone could have made, or just like evokes emotion really effectively. And I definitely think that I would struggle to do that. I think I would also lose patience before I would get something that I was satisfied with. But I also feel like it's a different skill set. So to put it with like the more traditional forms of art that people do, whether it's like on paper or digital, feels a little problematic, I'd say.
Yeah. Have you ever messed around with systems like Dolly or Midjourney and done some prompt engineering? Have you gotten things you're generally happy with, or things that you felt like you could have done better on your own?
I felt like I got things that I liked how they looked, and it definitely felt like artistically satisfying, but it didn't feel like personally fulfilling, I'd say. Like I there was no there's no sense of like, oh, there's emotion or human feelings put into this. So I think I see it for myself more as a way to to get references, although I don't usually, my art process doesn't usually include tools like that.
Okay. No, yeah, it's always interesting to get an artist's take on these new systems that are being. I don't know. Would you say it's kind of a good thing because it's democratizing art like for everyone? So people who aren't as skilled now have a way and an outlet to express themselves as quote unquote artists, or do you think that it's still kind of uneven in the fact that if you are someone who's an artist and you know how to like really prompt engineer well, you could create art that's much better than someone who's not as experienced.
I think it does democratize it in a way. I feel like you don't have to necessarily do art a lot yourself in order to be able to say what looks good to you and what doesn't. And I feel like a lot of those things are generalized to the public. Like what looks good to you is probably what looks good to a lot of people. But yeah, I also feel like I'm not sure if it's a completely positive thing. I think that there's still a lot of questions in surrounding AI in general and who gets credit, and it can pull from art that and base its new art from pieces that artists have done, and those artists might not get credit or might not even know that their art is being used in that way. So I feel like it does democratize the process, which is a good thing, of course, but there's definitely lots of things that need to be figured out.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that sentiment. So before we kind of move on and talk more about some of your life at Penn and other professional and academic interests, I just wanted to come back here once and just kind of show everyone your Instagram page where you also post a lot of your art. And I see you showed off some of your stuff in an art show. So how did that go? And have you done many art shows or fairs like this before? Or was this your first time doing it?
This was my first time at an art show or fair, and it was so awesome. I saw so many other artists there, and everyone's work was so beautiful. I went with one of my roommates who also has amazing art, and it was so cool to see people come to my table and give me their thoughts. But I definitely hope to do more in the future, and also just sell my art more. I think that's one of my goals.
All right, cool. So, and I'm sure a lot of people would be very interested in this. So, tell us a little bit more about digital media and design and how that's been as a major. And yeah, what are some of the most interesting classes you've gotten to take? And what also inspired you to choose that as a major?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'll start chronologically in my life. So with the last question, I chose this I chose this major because I've always liked drawing. I've been drawing since I was a really young kid, so I wanted some major that allowed me to be creative. And so of course the art side of DMD appealed to me. But I also just generally liked my STEM classes in high school, so I wanted something that involved that as well. And when I was growing up, my brother went to Penn actually, and he majored in computer science, which motivated me to take computer science classes in high school. And then I liked those classes, so I just chose this major. But yeah, the major itself, it's a combination of computer science and art, and the computer science part of it focuses on computer graphics, and it accounts for most of the major. Like computer science, I've heard people say it takes up 85% of the major, or sometimes 75%. And then art is really only like 15 to 20%. Um, the art part of it is taking art electives, and those electives are worked into the major, but you have flexibility in what art classes you take. Although some of the computer graphics classes I've taken, I'd say like probably at this point, like one of them I've taken was more art focused. But yeah, that leads into one of your questions, like some of the most favorite classes I've had. And I would say CIS 566, but right now 5660. That was procedural graphics, and I really liked that class. It was definitely programming focused, but it also allowed for a lot of creativity and art. For one of the projects, I worked in a group and we created like this procedural carousel generator. And
What do you mean by
yeah,
procedural? Like for example, in this carousel that you made, like what is the procedural aspect of it?
yeah. So this one is on my website. If you want a visual at some point, but basically, like if you imagine toy carousels,
Yeah. And by the
yeah,
way,
you
I
can go
just
to,
brought up your website. So should I go here to project?
yes, it's the third one.
Okay, I see it here.
Yeah. But basically, like, yeah, you have these, oh, wait for it to load. I don't know if it's gonna load, but okay, perfect. There are these toy carousels. We were inspired by toy carousels that you might see in like Pinocchio's, like the workshop studio. And basically, it would be a tool that artists could use, say in like a animated movie or something, and you would be able to, oh yes, this is our final product, but
Oh,
you would be able to create a lot of different variations of what a carousel would look like by tuning different parameters, like how tall it is, how big it is, feeding in a different OBJ file that would be like, oh, I want it to be horses or like ducks that's spinning around in the carousel. And
so,
yeah,
so right here, like this is all generated with computer graphics. Like none of this is actually a real video of any real carousel objects.
yeah, this is all our output.
It's awesome.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
then, I'm not super familiar with all these tools. I've definitely heard of the Unreal Engine because I used to play Fortnite. But explain like a little bit more to me and the people who are watching. Like, what are some of these tools? What's Houdini? And then also like, where did the Unreal Engine come into this? I see you can read it all here, but maybe just give a quick summary of that.
Yeah, of course. So Houdini is a tool that you can use to model things procedurally. It uses a node network. So for this, for example, I could like say, oh, I want a cylinder, and then it gives me a cylinder, and I'm like, oh, scale it vertically this much. But then I can parameterize that. So that basically looks like exposing that parameter, like the scale parameter, to the user so they can tweak those things themselves. But of course, there are a lot of parameters you could have, like the radius of the cylinder, or like the XZ scale of the cylinder. So you wouldn't want to expose all of those to the user, and you could choose which ones as the designer of whatever you're modeling procedurally to expose, which makes you able to create tools like a procedural carousel tool that sort of generates these using the parameters that you give to the user.
So can you edit all these parameters like if you wanted to, like using code to like get very into the specifics, or is it all you have to use their interface here to edit parameters?
So as the user of the tool, you would be able to edit the parameters on the interface, so that would be like changing numbers. But as like the creators of the tool, we can go into the node network and change how we want it to look.
And then Unreal, is that for the graphical pieces themselves, or is that more like the physics engine of like how the movement works?
So the way that we used Unreal was just to present the carousels. So I had this like wood texture that I created in Adobe Substance Painter or Substance Designer, I think. And then I slapped that onto like some like cubes that I scaled to make like a bookshelf. And then I placed these on to the bookshelf because Unreal, it just made everything look nicer.
Yeah.
So then we put it there so we could get some nice shots of it. And then we used blueprints, which is like an Unreal thing, to make the carousels turn. So that's like handling the animation.
That's cool. So yeah, I also wanted to show off some of your comic strips. I know that's something you have a passion for and you've worked on. So yeah, I got a lot of entertainment reading these One of You comic strips. So yeah, tell us a little bit about this, and meantime while you're talking, I'll kind of go through some of um the bits of the comic so people can get an idea of it. But yeah, tell us where the idea came from and what inspired you, and then kind of how you got the inspiration for each comic strip.
Yeah, so this is a comic strip I created like the summer before college, I want to say. And I I had started creating comics in high school, I think. Yeah. And so I thought it was like a fun way to explore like like drawing characters in art, and then also just creating like little stories behind them. I'm very bad at committing to a comic, so I have like a bunch of different series because I just like thinking of like the concept and then creating the characters and how they would look and how they would act, but I'm very bad at committing to a certain one. But I think this is the favorite one I have out of all of them, and my most recent one. But the idea came from like the main character is this girl and she's from another planet, but then she comes to Earth and we don't really know why she's here, but she is a new college student, and she basically just tries to fit in and not reveal the fact that she is from another planet. And so I think that it was definitely inspired by what was going on in my life. Like I was going to college, and yeah, I think that the idea of like feeling like an outsider is something that probably resonates with a lot of people. So I think I was pulling from those ideas of like, oh, this girl, she probably feels like an outsider. Everything is so new, everything is like changing around her, and she's trying to understand the world that is around her that's very new. But yeah.
Yeah. So is this your way of kind of introducing people to the fact that you're actually from a different planet, and this is a way of soft launching that without like being, was that like kind of the main motivation behind these comic strips?
Wow, I don't know how you made that leap in connection, but this is something that not a lot of people know actually. But yeah, this has got to stay under wraps. No one else can know
I
about
don't think
this.
it'll stay under wraps once I upload this podcast to YouTube and everyone finds out about it.
Oh yeah, I'll have to move to another planet by then, I guess. I'll just be
I hope you
displaced.
continue adding to either this comic strip or you start another one, because definitely fun and entertaining.
Thank you.
So yeah, this has been great. We got to learn so much awesome stuff. Do you have any advice for maybe people who are interested in like a similar career path, someone who either wants to work at Adobe specifically or who's also just interested in this whole area of digital media and design?
I would say, I think like be inspired by the things that you see around you and like be curious about how they're being done and also just try your hand at things. Like, I think one thing I struggled with was in the beginning, I felt like everything was so new. Like, I came into this major and I barely 3D model anything ever. And like the idea of 3D modeling is sort of at the basis of many things like procedural modeling and some of the 3D modeling classes you take as a part of DMD. But I didn't understand how anything worked and I got very scared off by that. But it's okay to be bad at things. And if you keep trying, like you eventually start finding things that you're good at and things that you enjoy, and then you like grow those skills. So I would say just be open, be inspired, um, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Good advice for anyone who actually is interested in something. Um, so are you excited to be starting at Adobe? Is this, you said this is going to be more of a CS role than kind of a digital media role at this point? I
Yeah, yeah, I'm super excited. I did like an iOS programming internship like a few summers ago. So I became interested in iOS a lot. So I'm very grateful to be in like on the iOS team of Lightroom. And yeah, and I'm also going to be living on the West Coast, which is pretty fun. It's going to be a change of pace. I've been living on the East Coast like my entire life, except for the summers that I went over there, but it'll definitely be really interesting.
cool. I'm excited for you. All
Thank
right,
you.
just a couple more questions before we wrap things up. Getting more into some of the other things you've done at Penn. I guess one way to kind of maybe capture the rest of your Penn experience, I'll ask you one question. What's the wildest experience you've had while at Penn these past 4 years?
Oh, while at Penn. Hmm.
Wildest, craziest experience. And it doesn't have to be like DMD related or art related at all, just
Okay.
anything.
Well, this wasn't exactly on Penn campus, but I went to Switzerland with some friends from Penn. We were visiting one of our friends who was studying abroad there at the time, and I was skiing for like the second time in my life ever, and we were on the Swiss Alps, and like one of my friends had told me that it would be okay to like ski down instead of taking, I think it's called the gondola that like that brings you down.
Yeah.
So it was not okay. We actually ended up going down like a route that was closed, but we didn't know that it was closed, and the the snow got really chunky and it was hard to go down, and it was the slopes were like so steep. I mean, they looked steep to me, but I don't know if they were really that steep, but they seemed very steep. And I also, it was my second time skiing, so I didn't know what I was doing. And eventually, I just had to like, my friend who is like a very experienced skier took my skis, and then I just started like butt sliding down the mountain. And then we eventually had to call like a rescue car to come get us. I'd say that's the craziest experience I've had in a bit.
Um, I guess last question. I'm starting a new segment to this podcast where I ask people about some like more current event things going on in their area of interest. So no worries. I'll share the screen here. No worries if you don't have too many thoughts on this, but NVIDIA just had a big conference recently, their 2025 conference, where they talked about a lot of like really cool stuff. And one of the things they're talking about is there's some new kit that they released, but it uses neural rendering technologies to build these like really photorealistic um, environments that can be used in games. Do you know anything about neural rendering tech, and like what are your thoughts on maybe not neural rendering specifically, but just where we're going in terms of getting these photorealistic environments.
Yeah, I think I saw some news about this actually. This looks vaguely familiar. Um, but yeah, I don't know that much about neural rendering. Um, but I think that in general, like it's becoming a lot easier to make like impressive environments, like realistic environments, real time. And I think just the technology is like growing and it's growing quickly. So this is very exciting and it does um, it does give a lot of potential to the kinds of games we might see in the future. Games that are like a lot more realistic and yeah.
Yeah, no, this stuff looks really cool, and I'm excited to play games like that. Even in like a VR world, that would be insane to and be able to immerse yourself in something that looks so like highly realistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thanks for giving your thoughts on that. And yeah, I think we can wrap things up here. What did you think? How did you think this episode of the Unbuttoned podcast was? And maybe will you come back again some other time?
It was awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come back. Yeah, I love seeing and talking about art and seeing your work. And it was really interesting. I hadn't seen that before, so thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. And I can't let you go without showing everyone the last piece of artistic. Yeah, so this I was inspired. I was playing a bunch of chess yesterday and I was just on a losing streak. And then I just thought like how bad of a chess player could I possibly be? And I was thinking about like what would be the most embarrassing thing to lose to. And I also happened to see an apple nearby, so I was thinking like what if one of those like comical like worms coming out like the like worm coming out of an apple type thing like comes out and was able to beat me in chess, like that would be pretty pathetic. And then that kind of inspired me to um bring this sentiment out onto paper.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you can express yourself like that in art, and I totally see that now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I had to end by showing that and make sure everyone got to see my work. But thank
Yeah.
you so much, Claire, for coming on the podcast. Take care. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Or at least